The dictionary defines a dream as a series of thoughts, images, and sensations occurring in a person's mind during sleep. Most of us know the story of God coming to Abraham and telling him that he would be the father of many nations. And sometimes we think our dreams must be deep and mysterious, but quite often they're simply addressing our current situation, our needs, and we must apply them accordingly. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of the Spoken Bible podcast. Thank you all so much for subscribing. It truly means a lot to me, and it makes it easier to keep doing this. I appreciate you all. God bless you. So this week, we're going to be looking at a very interesting topic. We're going to be looking at dreams. In episode 1, we discussed generational curses and patterns. In episode 2, we talked about altars and covenants, and now we're talking about dreams. I truly believe that there is a connection between these 3 topics, and hopefully, as we go along, you'll agree with me. I have to put my hands up and confess. Previously, I never took dreams as a serious way in which God communicates with us. I have to admit that in the past, I relied more on what I saw and the inner voice of God speaking to my spirit man. It always occurred to me that whenever someone said they were going to do something and it didn't work out, they would claim God told them something and it still didn't work out. The story always seemed to start with, I had a dream, or God said, or I dreamt this, and this was what God told me to do. So I was really reluctant to take dreams as a credible means of God's communication. But now I truly believe, especially as we approach the end times, that dreams are going to become very vital in the way God speaks to us. We see in Joel 2:28, and it shall come to pass afterwards that I will pour out my spirit on all flesh. Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, your old men shall dream dreams, and your young men shall see visions. Here we see that God has promised us that the ability to dream is innate within us. I think it's important that we distinguish between what a dream is and what a vision is. Dreams happen while we sleep. Visions happen when we awake. The dictionary defines a dream as a series of thoughts, images, and sensations occurring in a person's mind during sleep. A trance, according to the dictionary, is a half-conscious state characterized by reduced response to external stimuli, typically induced by hypnosis or entered by a medium. In Acts 11, verse 5, Peter says, I was in the city of Joppa praying, and in a trance I saw a vision, an object descending like a great sheet, let down from heaven by 4 corners, and it came to me. So that's a trance. I also believe visions tend to affect a wider group of people. The vision Peter had, which I believe occurred 3 times, became the foundation of the doctrine that the gospel was meant for both the Jews and the Gentiles. That vision has gone on to affect the entire world even today. Dreams, on the other hand, tend to affect the individual or the individuals directly connected to them. This is why businesses or nations often speak of visions, while individuals refer to their personal dreams, which affect their lives and their immediate surroundings. One of my absolute favorite stories in the Bible is found in Genesis 20, verse 18. In this story, King Abimelech takes Sarah, Abraham's wife, intending to sleep with her. Eventually, Abimelech has a dream, and God says to him, and this is my gangster God, tonight you shall surely die. Abraham had lied to Abimelech, saying Sarah was his sister and not his wife. Technically, she was his half sister, but that's for another day because they shared the same father, but she was also his wife. So Abimelech, innocent in his mind, finds himself being threatened with death by God in a dream. What's interesting is that you don't get the full meaning until you read the story to the end. Here we see that God used a dream as a warning, a consequence of Abimelech's future action, that if he slept with Sarah, he would die. From this story, we can deduce that God often speaks to us through dreams after we failed to heed his voice in other ways. If we read the entire story and piece it together, it becomes clear that Sarah must have been in the palace for at least 2 years or more, even though the narrative feels like everything happened in a week. I believe God had already been warning Abimelech about keeping Sarah in his palace. Maybe the priest had spoken, there had been signs that he had ignored, but that's just my opinion, but I will tell you why I think so. In Genesis 20:17-18, it says, "So Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, his wife, and his female servants. Then they bore children, for the Lord had closed up all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife." So this was the situation. Sarah had entered the palace, and we're assuming that where a king is, there's fruitfulness, there's prosperity, and clearly all of a sudden, everything was barren. Then Abimelech becomes ill, though the Bible does not specify the illness. But I think if we look at the fact that there was a lot of barrenness in his wives, it was clear that it could have been some sort of impotency. And also the fact that Abimelech hadn't slept with Sarah, even though that was why he took her. Abimelech's wives and female servants also could not conceive. The whole palace had become unfruitful. Nothing was growing anywhere. I'm sure all the sorcerers, the diviners, the magicians had been trying to figure out why. After years, God finally had mercy and spoke to Abimelech in a dream, telling him to return Sarah. Abraham then prayed for him. God healed him, and the palace became fruitful again. So we see here, God used a dream after he had sent other warnings which had been ignored. The dream was connected to Abimelech's ongoing situation. The dream gave both a warning and also provided a solution. And sometimes we think our dreams must be deep and mysterious, but quite often they're simply addressing our current situation, our needs, and we must apply them accordingly. So let's look into another example of God speaking through dreams. Here we see in Genesis 31, God appears to Jacob in a dream, telling him it was time to leave Laban. What is interesting here is that God references the covenant made at the altar in Bethel as the basis for this instruction. Genesis 31:11-13 says, "Then the angel of God spoke to me in a dream, saying, 'Jacob,' and he said, 'Lift your eyes now and see, all the rams which leap on the flocks are streaked, speckled, and gray spotted. For I've seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed the pillar and where you made a vow to me. Now arise, get out of this land and return to the land of your family.'" Here God used a dream to give instruction and encouragement. He had seen Laban's deceit and was now ready to deliver Jacob. From this dream, Jacob received the blueprint that allowed him to outwit Laban. But God didn't stop there. He also appeared in a dream to Laban to warn him also. And this we see in Genesis 31. But God had come to Laban the Syrian in a dream by night and said to him, Be careful that you speak to Jacob, neither good nor bad. Note that even though Laban did not worship the God of Israel, God still spoke to him in a dream. Here we see God using dreams to instruct and protect, speaking to both Jacob and Laban about the same situation. Another example is Abraham's dream. Most of us know the story of God coming to Abraham and telling him that he would be the father of many nations. This part of the covenant happened while Abraham was in a vision, a trance, as he performed a sacrifice to seal the covenant. Later on, he goes to sleep and has a dream in which God reveals the future, the suffering of Israel in Egypt. Genesis 15 says, "When the sun was setting, a deep sleep overcame Abram, and a horror, terror, shuddering fear, nightmare of great darkness overcame him." What Abraham experienced was essentially a prophetic nightmare. He was looking into the future to see the bondage and the pain that the children of Israel will go through in Egypt. It was for future generations, so that when the Israelites suffered in Egypt, the scrolls that were written would remind them that God had foretold this centuries before. And because he had prophesied before, he obviously would send a solution. I've heard pastors say the bad dreams are from the enemy. But to be honest, I don't agree. I don't believe the enemy has the access to our dream realm. They can interrupt us in terms of our thoughts, our minds, and our visions. But I believe the enemy operates more in trances where people can sleepwalk or act out of unconsciousness. I have found no biblical evidence of satanic dreams, but I'm quite happy to be corrected, and I will look forward to seeing comments, about anything anyone has to say on this issue. I do believe that God sometimes shows us frightening events in dreams, not to torment us, but to warn us, to prepare us, or to let us know that something is happening and it will not be a surprise to him. We see Job in chapter 7, verse 14 saying, "Then you frighten me with dreams and terrify me with visions." So God does give frightening dreams and visions. Of course, we can't discuss dreams without mentioning Joseph. Most people would associate Joseph with dreams and call him Joseph the Dreamer. But for me, he was actually more of a dream interpreter, because there are only 2 dreams that are recorded that he had: his father's sheaves bowing to his, the sun, moon, and 11 stars also bowing to him. The second dream was both accurate and prophetic. The 11 stars were prophetic because Benjamin wasn't born yet, but his mother was already dead by the time the dream of his brothers bowing down to him came to pass. So we see here a dream that is both literal and symbolic. We also see that Abraham had already dreamt about Israel's future slavery in Egypt. Joseph's dreams triggered the chain of events that led to that prophecy unfolding. His brothers became jealous, sold him to the Ishmaelites. He was taken to Egypt, became prime minister. Israel moved to Egypt, and a future pharaoh then became afraid of the number of Israelites and decides to enslave them. So the bondage of Israel was both foretold in a dream and triggered by a dream. Now let's dive into a somewhat controversial area here: dreaming of dead loved ones. People see persons who have passed or their loved ones appearing to them in a dream. Some think it's fine, some say it's demonic. I've heard stories that sway both ways, but based on scripture, at least what I have found in my analysis, this is what I believe. Hebrews 9:27 says, "It is appointed for men to die once, but after this, the judgment." So after death, a person goes to judgment, then heaven or hell. There is no biblical basis for the dead returning to interact casually with the living. I can only find 2 examples in the Bible where dead people are shown to interact with the living. The first one is where Samuel, appearing through the witch of Endor in 1 Samuel 28. Saul goes to the witch of Endor to use divination to bring back the spirit of Samuel and to talk to him. Yes, the dead can appear, but here we're seeing it happening through the use of demonic means and through demonic gateways. The issue is not can it happen, but how does it happen? If we remember Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, they got knowledge by eating the fruit from the forbidden tree, whereas that same knowledge they could have found from their intimate relationship and fellowship with God. So it wasn't that they got the knowledge, it was how they got the knowledge. So is it God ordained or not? We also see that Moses and Elijah appear at the Transfiguration in Matthew 17. This second example on the Mount of Transfiguration happens when the disciples fall asleep and wake up to see Jesus standing with both Moses and Elijah. In verse 2-3 it says, "And he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, his clothes became as white as light. And behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, talking with him." So at that time, it's about 1,400 years after Moses and Elijah are no longer on earth. But what we must remember is that both Moses and Elijah had supernatural exits from this earth. Moses was called up to God. Until today, there's no evidence of his body being buried anywhere. And we can find proof of this in Deuteronomy 34, verse 5-6. "So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord. And he buried him in a valley in the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor. But no one knows his grave to this day." What this shows is that there is no witness to Moses' death, and it was God himself that buried Moses. He was called up to the mountain by God, and he was never seen again. Until today, nobody knows where Moses' grave is. And then we see in Jude 1, verse 9, a random reference to Moses' body. "Yet Michael the archangel, in contending with the devil, when he disputed about the body of Moses, dared not bring against him a revolting accusation, but said, 'The Lord rebuke you.'" This means that there was something supernatural and mysterious about how Moses died, that we probably will never really understand this side of heaven. We also see in Elijah in 2 Kings 2 verse 11, it says, "Then it happened, as they continued on and talked, that suddenly a chariot of fire appeared with horses of fire and separated the two of them. And Elijah went out by a whirlwind into heaven." So this is different. Their appearance with Jesus was a divine encounter, not the dead returning normally. Therefore, I don't believe seeing dead people in dreams is something that we should happen to us as Christians or something that we need to dwell on. What I do believe, though, is that it represents a relationship. God can use it as a role or as a symbol or to highlight something. For example, someone might see a picture, a face of their dead father, but I believe that would be God trying to speak to them about fatherhood or something that is so pertinent about their relationship, that knowing that once the person sees that father, they will understand the message that God is trying to communicate. In conclusion, dreams can be both simple and complex. But dreams are a method God uses to share information, to warn us, to encourage us, to correct us, to inspire us. Dreams give us ideas and solutions. They reveal what to pray about, and help us avert future events. Job 33 verse 14 to 18 says, "For God may speak in one way or in another, yet man does not perceive it. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falls upon men while slumbering on their beds, then he opens the ears of men and seals their instruction in order to turn man from his deed and conceal pride from man." Here, Job is saying dreams are a credible way of God to communicate. God will speak through his word, through his spirit, and then through dreams when we fail to hear him. Thank you all so much for listening to episode 3 of the Spoken Bible podcast. Today we explored what dreams are, God's intention with dreams. We explored examples in the Bible and how the devil can try to thwart its significance. Please, if this blessed you, please share it with someone. I pray that we will all remember our dreams. Now, I have gotten into the habit most mornings when I wake up, I always pray, God, if there are any dreams I've had that I don't remember, please bring to my memory. And every contrary dream we cancel, and every dream that we know brings blessings, we ask God to seal it. God bless you, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you.